Okay, if you guys all see this, below are 2 truths and 1 false. Did you do it the last time?
Yeah, we already did this.
You already did this?
Yeah.
So I forgot which one it was. Go ahead.
No, they're all.
No, you did not. Oh, it wasn't none of these?
Yeah, they're all. Yeah, they're all.
No.
They're all true.
Yeah.
No, they're not.
Yes,
They are.
Every single one?
Yeah.
Every single one. All right. My topic this afternoon is how green and safe are our electrical energy sources? We've all heard the phrase, "Don't confuse me with facts." My mission today is to enlighten you with facts. My agenda is, first of all, I'll talk about what our energy sources are. Then I'll discuss what our energy source criteria are. Then I'll compare the sources to the criteria. And then we'll open it up for questions. Sources. Gas and coal, they comprise 60% of our electrical energy. About almost 20% is provided by nuclear, and then wind and solar provide about 12.4%, 12.5%. Hydro 7%, and the rest is 1%. That includes oil and geothermal and things like that. Energy criteria. We want the source to be as least harmful to the environment as possible. We also want it to harm people as least as possible. And of course, we want to rely, because when you flip the switch, you want the electricity to be there. And it's got to be affordable. Now, world life cycle. This life cycle includes everything from mining the ore, processing the ore, manufacturing the equipment, constructing the plant, operating, decommissioning the plant, including the waste, disposal of the waste, the whole cycle, everything. Wind and nuclear are essentially equal. The uncertainty of these numbers is such that they really aren't any different. So wind and nuclear have the least carbon footprint. Hydro is third and solar is fourth, and gas and coal are obviously very, very poor on the carbon footprint. Now, safety. That's per terawatt hour. Terawatt is a trillion. I think it's a trillion. I forget. Anyway, nuclear is obviously by far the safest. And wind is second and solar is third. And coal and nuclear are obviously worst. I mean, coal and oil. Reliability. Nuclear plants have a 92.2% reliability record. Natural gas and coal come in around the 55%. Hydro is down there at 43%. Wind and solar are down around 30%. Cost. Nuclear power plants, the cost is around $32. Once you get the plant built and paid off, the electricity is basically almost zero. $68 if you build a new plant. Onshore wind is $50 and offshore wind is $88. Solar comes in at $56, and you can see where the rest of them are. Bottom line, nuclear is the cleanest and safest by far. Wind and solar come in second and third, and coal and gas are the worst. Nuclear is by far the most reliable. Wind and solar are the worst. But the bottom line is we need all three of nuclear, wind, and solar. And we need to phase out coal and oil, coal and gas. That concludes my presentation.
Now, is that natural gas?
Yes, natural gas.
Natural gas. Okay.
Yeah.
I have a couple
Question.
questions. I have a couple questions. What,
Yeah.
can you hear me? Thank you. What makes nuclear so stable?
What makes it so stable?
reliable?
They have a very strong safety and reliability. Safety and reliability are basically it's highly intertwined, and so they have a strong safety culture, which makes them very reliable. Following 3 Mile Island, the nuclear executives got together and said, what do we do? And one of the things they did was they set up an organization called the Institute of Nuclear Power Operators, INPO, INPO. Now, INPO is staffed primarily by former nuclear Navy people. The nuclear Navy has an exemplary safety record. You never hear anything in the news about accidents with the nuclear Navy. And INPO, anytime there is a failure or a mistake at a nuclear power plant, INPO evaluates it. And then they send out recommendations as to how to avoid such a mistake in the future. If a power plant does not follow INPO's recommendations, they become ineligible for insurance, which pays them for replacement power if they shut down.
It sounds like INPO is, the FAA of the airline industry. Like they regulate, they create the rules. You don't follow.
It's not a government agency. The FAA is government, and the counterpart of the FAA would be the Nuclear Regulatory Commission.
Okay.
The INPO is an industry are more concerned about inspections and recommendations by INPO than they are by the Nuclear Regulatory.
How do you?
Only focuses on safety. INPO focuses on reliability and shuts down the replacement.
Yeah, because it's the financial aspect of it. How do we replace the juice? And that they're more worried about that.
And so insurance pool reimburses them for this $500,000 a day. And if they don't follow what INPO says, they're not eligible for that $500,000 a day. So INPO has tremendous clout. Bill.
I wonder if I could ask about understanding the question. Was the question, what makes nuclear power so reliable? Was that the question?
Yeah, I do.
Didn't she ask it reliable?
Yes, that was right.
Yeah.
And isn't one of the answers that the fuel is on site you don't have to worry about gas compressors getting shut down somewhere or pipelines interrupted. You don't have to worry about wind turbine blades being frozen the way they were in Texas, etc. So,
Well, you're right. They are not subject to any environmental conditions. They're almost totally immune to environmental conditions. The one thing that can really shut them down is a flood. But other than that, well, the other thing that can shut them down is hurricane, tornado, which would wipe out the power lines that surround the plant.
Yeah. So I have a question. So two parts. So I've heard so do you subscribe to that? And also, why are we as a country so resistant to nuclear power? Why is our country, we don't like nuclear power?
Okay. 3 Mile Island was a result of poor training of the operating staff, design errors, and a maintenance error.
Okay.
They had left the valve closed after they did some maintenance. They had a turbine trip, which shut the plant down. And this valve that was left closed prevented makeup water to come into the reactor vessel, emergency or shutdown. It was a shutdown emergency water. And this led to a series of problems, and the operators, thinking that the plant was going into a condition that would be potentially disastrous, shut off all the emergency makeup water. That led to the core melting. There was no sabotage. It was just the fact that they were poor training and poor design. And that's when the nuclear industry executives got together and said, how do we prevent this kind of thing from happening again? They created INPO.
Why is our country so resistant to nuclear power?
I mean,
Is it the oil industry? And then one last thing, are the deaths that you had, are those just human deaths, or birds flying into wind, like turbines, and getting radiated by solar panels?
your machine is too slow.
I know. Okay, there you go. You have to do that slideshow thing down at the bottom.
All right.
Does anybody know the average age of a nuclear power plant?
Oh, here we go. That's what I'm looking for.
Yes. Wendy asked, what's the age of the power plant? Of a
Right.
nuclear power plant?
Or how many do we have, and how old are they, I guess?
The perception of the truth by the public is obscured by the symbiosis between activists and the news media. The activists need publicity, and the news media needs sensationalism. Back in the 60s, in the 70s, actually the 60s, the Department of Energy started to put out information to educate the public about nuclear. And you had activists, members of Congress, senators and and representatives who said, knock that stuff off or we'll cut your funds off. In the 74, in the oil embargo crisis that we had, France was totally reliable on Middle East oil. After that, following that crisis, they said, we've got to get ourselves independent of Middle East oil. They have no natural resources. They have no coal or oil or gas, and they've totally used up their hydro sites. And the only option was to go nuclear. And so they went on a program to educate the public as to what the problem was and what the solution was. And they got 80% of their electricity coming from nuclear now. Whereas Germany and the United States, which have the luxury of other sources of energy, the activists have been very successful at convincing the public that there's a problem, and there's not really a problem. There's not a waste problem. There's a political problem as to how to finally store waste. But have you ever heard of any waste actually causing a problem? I mean, non-government waste I'm talking about, because the government makes headlines once in a while that there's a leak up in Hanford. But once the headline goes away, you never hear of any consequences because the leaks are really a no, never mind. All of this, they stir the pot and constantly say, oh my God, the sky is falling, but the sky is never even close to falling. Far from it.
So let me ask that question. So how many nuclear power plants do we have in the United States, and what's their age?
Say that again?
How many nuclear power plants do we have in the U.S., and what is their age? Like how old are
We got about 100.
Okay, well.
And the original licenses were for 40 years. Now, a lot of those have exceeded the 40 years, and they're getting license life extensions. And a number of plants have already gotten their life extensions, and they've been extended out to 80 years. Diablo Canyon, their license will expire in 24 and 25 respectively for the two plants. They started a life extension application to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, but they also needed permission from the state for some state permits. At the time, Gavin Newsom was Lieutenant Governor and chair of the California Environmental Resources Agency. And he said, there's no way you're going to get your state permits renewed. And so PG&E then said, okay, it's going to cost us more to fight you than to shut the plant down and start emphasizing solar and wind. And that's what they did. And now Governor Newsom, as renewables and the problems with climate change, he's now requested from the federal government funds to extend the life. So we'll see what happens.
But do these 100 facilities throughout the United States, if they're 40 or 50 or 60 years old, if we were to activate them, do they require major retrofitting just to come up to today's standard, whatever today's standard is? I'm trying to determine how old our facilities are. 50, 60-year-old bridges need to be retrofitted. Houses that are 50, 60 years old, they need to be retrofitted. So for these 100 facilities, are they decrepit and falling apart? I understand the license is being extended, but what about the facilities? Do you know anything about that?
to get their license extended, a plant needs to put in an application to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission for approval. And this is just like going in and applying for a brand new license for a brand new plant. They get their total safety reviewed. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission, when I was on the faculty at Penn State, they would come in and interview people to go work at the new NRC. They would not interview you unless you had a 4.0 average. You had to have a straight A average to get a job at the NRC. The NRC has crackerjack people. And when I was working at GE, I interfaced extensively with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and I can attest that those people are top notch. And so they go through everything with a fine tooth comb, plus the fact the Nuclear Regulatory Commission operates in a fishbowl. Everything they do is open to the public. And so these activists are going to be sitting there like vultures waiting for you to make a mistake. And so they are ultra careful about making sure that there is absolute total safety for anything they approve.
Okay, my question is, you were talking about Diablo. What's the difference between Fukuyama and Japan, what happened there with the earthquake, and what they say about Diablo being March?
Fukushima, the earthquake happened and the plant survived the earthquake fine, no problems whatsoever. It did shut down automatically. And then about an hour later, the tidal wave hit. The tidal wave came in and flooded the plant site and shut out all of the electricity. But now, there was a seawall. And the seawall was 15 feet high. The tsunami was 50 feet high. There had been an analysis that said your seawall is inadequate. It should be higher. Now, in Japan, there was something called the Nuclear Club. This consisted of executives of the utility, which owned the power plant, Toshiba, which built the power plant, and members of the legislature who reviewed the nuclear safety regulations. And these executives would rotate positions in this nuclear club, and they're all getting rich off of nuclear power plants. And they said, it is too expensive to build a higher seawall. We're not going to build a higher seawall. Following the Fukushima accident, the Japanese Diet, that's their legislature or parliament, set up a commission to look at what was the root causes of the accident. The conclusion was the primary root cause was Japanese culture, because the Japanese have this culture of don't make waves, fit in, don't cause problems. And so that's, even though there are people who knew that the seawall wasn't adequate, they didn't make waves. They just accepted the problem.
Was it too, like I've read, where they kept the pump, they kept the stuff that would be there to help them after the fact, it was too low down and that all got wiped out, instead of leaving it up above and then bring it down after the fact? Because it washed away all the safety emergency equipment.
Yeah. Well, seawater came in and flooded the turbine building, and it also flooded, seawater gets into the electrical equipment, it's going to short everything out. And so it shorted out not only the emergency diesels, but also the backup batteries. And so they lost total electricity. But in spite of that, it took 3 days for the plants to release any radioactivity, which gave the authorities plenty of time to evacuate the surrounding area. However, they really didn't need to evacuate the surrounding area. The International Atomic Energy Agency issued a report that said the amount of radioactivity released wasn't high enough to really necessitate evacuation. And there were about 1,000 people that died because of the evacuation. You think about people who were in intensive care units in hospitals, and they move them. And Fukushima, nobody died because of radiation. They only died because of the evacuation. Bill.
Is it possible for us to recycle spent fuel? The Savannah River
Oh, yeah.
did exist, but does it still exist, or is it?
France,
Yeah.
China, Japan, UK, and Russia all recycle their fuel. Back in the in the 70s, I guess. Yes, 70s. We were starting to develop recycle capability, and Jimmy Carter shut it down. He issued an executive order, said that you shall not recycle fuel. And his rationale was that if we recycle fuel, that'll increase the risk of proliferation of nuclear weapons. And if we do this, other countries will follow our example. Well, obviously, other countries didn't follow our example because we got those 5 countries who are recycling fuel. And at the time, we were the world's leader on nuclear power. And following that, they said, they turned to other countries to get the nuclear power, that we are no longer the dominant country. The dominant countries today are Russia and China. China are now the 2 countries that are building most nuclear power plants.
So is right, because I heard before Russia had problems because I've read where Russia had problems because they didn't have like a cookie cutter design for their plants. So they had numerous different variations of the plants, so it wasn't interchangeable. So are they now building cookie cutter plants? They're all the same, so they know how to work on them, they know the issues?
Yeah, their plants are following Chernobyl. They said we would like to set up a worldwide equivalent of INPO, and that has been done. There's it's called WANO, World Association of Nuclear Operators, WANO, and they do the same sort of thing as INPO, evaluate all these any problem of any nuclear power plant anywhere, and send out recommendations for fixes. But they don't have the clout that INPO has, because INPO has this clout because of the insurance. WANO doesn't have a worldwide clout. It's all just recommendations. Anyway, Chernobyl was designed as a plant to produce plutonium for weapons and produced electricity as a byproduct. And it was inherently unstable. And the design was very unsafe. And when they had this accident, They also had a comedy of operator errors. There were 6 absolutely stupid bonehead errors that the operators made. If they'd only made five, the accident wouldn't have happened. But they did things like, you're in a truck at the top of a mountain and you're about to go down and you want to test your emergency brakes. So you get out and cut the brake lines on your regular brakes so you don't interfere with your emergency brake. I mean, that's the order of magnitude of the stupid errors they made. The thing was, the Soviet Union at the time had 0 safety culture. 0. They were a bureaucracy where if somebody on high said jump, they would say, how high do you want me to jump? And so Chernobyl was told to do a safety test, and in trying to do this safety test, they made these 5 bonehead errors that caused the accident. But as I say, the current designs of Russia are good because they've all come up to the current standards.
Okay, that's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
All right, Ostrowski, last
Paul
question.
wants to ask a question.
Last question, Ostrowski.
Just a quick question.
Last question.
So our infrastructure today is requiring a lot more electric cars to be on the market and be sold. Do you think our infrastructure can handle that growth?
I can't hear.
When it comes to the electronic cars like Tesla, for example,
Oh, yeah.
we have all these cars that are coming out to be plugged into our infrastructure. Do you think the system's going to be able to accommodate that growth?
Well, no.
Yeah.
We are actually going to run into a severe problem of that nature. Somebody told me the other day that there was a 2-year backlog on ordering electric cars.
All manufacturers?
I'm sorry?
Is that all manufacturers, just Tesla?
Yes, all manufacturers. And they start building these cars, there's just not going to be enough electricity.
So you're saying it's important to have all the infrastructure. So it's important to really have all the manufacturers or all these facilities working to accommodate the growth.
We're going to have to build nuclear power plants, solar plants, and wind plants as fast as we can.
But in
Yeah.
California, you think they would approve a new nuclear power plant?
No.
Do you think in California they would say yes?
It's against the law right now
Yeah, I mean,
because California passed, there were initiatives back in the, I guess it was the 70s, where they said, we shall not build any new power plants in California.
so we do it in Nevada, Arizona, and then send us the power.
As a matter of fact, we're doing that right now. We're buying nuclear power from Arizona.
It's crazy.
All the water's being run out of Colorado, so it won't be any more power coming from it.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. That was very informative.
You're very welcome.